not to just have it for yourself, but to be it for other people. Now, what stops us from this? Something so awesome as this, what stops us from this? There's a lot of answers to that, but I want to close this out by having a moment with God with you that's found in Matthew chapter 13. And Jesus tells this story in Matthew 13 of the sower. And he said there's a guy, and this guy, he sows seed. And there's 4 different kinds of ground. And as Gentile people, as Greek-thinking people, we tend to think of that as you have to be one or the other. You're either the hard ground or the stony ground or the thorny ground or the good ground. You're one or the other. But that's really not the point at all. The truth is that all of us are hard ground at times. If I pick the right topic, your heart is hard toward it. And all of us have different areas. If you have an anger problem, if I was to go up here, if I was to preach on not having an anger problem tonight, you'd be the hard ground. And you could tell when someone is hard ground when you mention the word of God to them, and their first response is, yeah, but you don't understand me. It's like, okay, that's in that area, you're the hard ground. But that same person might have soft ground in the area of generosity. That same person might be good ground in the area of discipline. That same person might have good ground in other areas. Like stony ground. The stony ground was the people who the seed of the word of God gets sown, and it springs up real quickly, but because there's no root, it goes away. All of us have stony ground at times. Anybody ever started a diet and didn't finish it? Any of us ever been moved by God to do something? So you come to an altar real quick and you have this real moment with God, and then 6 days later it's not there anymore? All of us are stony ground with the right topic. And all of us are good ground with the right topic, assuming we all have good hearts and are basically mentally healthy. We all have good ground at times. But to close tonight out, I want to talk to you about the thorns. Because I think more than anything else, with really good-hearted people, the thorns are what keeps us from keeping the tassels wrapped. I think the thorns are what forces us sometimes to unwrap God. I think it's the thorns. And Jesus, I think it's verse 22, he says that the thorns are about people who hear the word of God. Like they hear it and they want to hear it. These are good-hearted people. They hear the word of God, and it starts to take root. But he says 2 things choke it out of their life. And the 2 things are this: the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth. The worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth. Does anybody besides me find themselves in that category? Has anybody besides me ever wanted with all their heart for God to do something in their life, but the worries of this life or the deceitfulness of wealth choked it out? Has anybody besides me ever really messed up bad? You've unwrapped the tassels, and you look back on why you unwrapped the tassels, and it's not because you have a rebellious, mean heart. It's because of the worries of this life or the deceitfulness of wealth. The worries of this life, the word worries, in some translations is translated cares or anxiety. In the Greek language, it's the word that means anything that causes a split. Anything that causes a split. In other words, anxiety in the Greek language was about anything that makes you be here, but you're actually there. Like earlier tonight, you're worshiping, and you were in a moment of worship with God, but in your mind, you were worried about there. You were worried about paying the bills. You were worried about going to work tomorrow. Your mind was on your to-do list for later. That you were here, but you're actually there. The worries of this life speaks to a failure to be here. It speaks to a failure to be fully present now. It speaks to things, the cares of this world that get us to unwrap the tassels. I don't wear this, obviously. I use it as a sermon illustration. But it sits in my closet. So, and without confessing too much to you, my closet is not the neatest thing. And so it sometimes it's here and sometimes it's there, whatever. And there was this one time where I was really agitated. The worries of this life had gotten to me so bad, I can't tell you where I was inside. I just can't tell you. It was unbelievable where I was. And I was standing in my closet, and I was going, what shirt will I wear today? And I was moving through the shirts, and as I was moving through the shirts, this was hanging between two of them, and the tassels came out, and I remembered that God's way is the way of life, that the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth will keep me from wholeness and healing, but there's still healing in his wings. I mean, come on, can we just be honest? How many of us need a touch from God tonight on the worries of this life? Does anybody besides me need God to do something in our life tonight that allows me to be here instead of here and also there and there and there? Has anybody, anybody in the room, have you ever been guilty of playing with your kids in the present, but in your mind you were with this person and that person and that person and that person? Has anybody ever been guilty of needing to spend time with the one person who's the most important to you, your spouse, and you're with them, but your mind can't even get there to engage? Your mind is there and there and there and there. And so you unwrap the tassels with the very person who means the most to you. Why? Because they'll normally take it from you. And we sow discord and dissension in our most important things. Why? Because of the worries of this life. The worries of this life. The other thing he said would cause that is the deceitfulness of wealth. The deceitfulness of wealth is the belief system that says, if I just had this, I would be happy. If I just had this, then I'd be happy. If only I could do this, then I'd be happy. Just 4 years ago, I was making $530 a week on staff at a large church. $530 a week. Man, I'm telling you, that ain't making it. And I remember thinking, man, and then the board of the church, they did some research on where our salaries were, and they realized that we were vastly underpaid. And so they came in these sweeping raises, I mean, huge raises, which begged the question, where was that before? You expected my best all this time, and you've had this sitting where? And so they gave us these huge raises, and they raised me from $530 a week to like $820 a week. This was like 4 years ago. And I remember thinking, I have arrived. I am we're eating steak tonight. Yeah. But see, when I was making $530 a week, I thought, if I could just make $40,000 a year, if I could just make that, then it would be that. And then you make 40 and you think, oh, well, then how many realize it takes about 4 months to adjust your lifestyle to where all that's gone? Yeah? And then you're like, oh, if I could just make 60. Oh, yeah, if I could just make 60. And then you make 60, and then you're like, oh, if I could just make 100. And then you make 100, and then people making 100 are going, oh, if I could just make 150. And then people who are making 150 are going, oh, what about that $250,000? What about that? And then people making $250,000, what about that $500,000? And to the point where we have people in this world who are worth $50 billion, and they still go to work every day. In other words, what's the principle in that? And it's true, and you're not the exception to the rule. You're not. The truth in that is this, is that it will never be enough. The deceitfulness of riches, the deceitfulness of wealth never satisfies. It never satisfies. The worries of this life will always make you there. And the deceitfulness of wealth will always make you live in the future. What God has called us to be is to be fully present now with our hands wrapped in the tassels in order to be salvation for other people. To be salvation. I just want to do this one thing. We'll close this out with this, and then I want us to have this real good moment with God. And that is this. I want you, if you're taking notes, you can do this on paper, but if not, you can do this in your mind. I want you to make a list. I love this exercise. I heard a pastor in America do this, and this was so cool. And in psychology training, we would do this. And if you were in my psychology office, this would cost $120 an hour. So just when you tally up your offering, kind of put that in there. Okay. If in your mind or on paper, I want you just to take notice. I want you to take notice of your worries. What are you worried about right now? Like tonight, where'd your mind go? Where'd your mind go tonight? You're in the presence of God, and your mind's wandering. My mind wandered on some things. Like what are you worried about today? What are those things? Just be honest to God about them. Where has the tassels come unraveled? What are those things?